Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. So, we are continuing our discussion on the nectar of devotion. So, today we will start with chapter 6, How to Discharge Devotional Service. So, the flow so far in terms of the previous chapters that we did, we started with an introduction wherein we defined pure devotional service, right? The Paribhasha Sutra, Anabilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Janagatam, and we spent some time defining what is pure devotional service, what is mixed devotional service, and what is not devotional service. And then we describe the 6 characteristics of bhakti, starting with Kleshangni, Subhuda, etc. Then we focused on sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti. Right? Well, how is it? What sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti is? What are the main two overriding principles? Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And the third chapter dealt about the levels of devotees, Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttamadhikari. Also, it began this discussion in terms of bhakti versus bhukti and mukti. Right? And the fourth chapter essentially was an expansion of this with several shastric references of the superiority of bhakti over material enjoyment and liberation. And the fifth chapter again had references in terms of the purity of devotional service. So this gets us to the sixth chapter, wherein now Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Prabhupada, they begin to talk about the details of executing bhakti. Right? So there are actually 8 chapters that will cover this aspect of the execution of bhakti. Right? So these 8 chapters will speak about the 64 items of sadhana Vedi bhakti. And in introducing this, Rupa Goswami, he explains that he is deriving it from Hari Bhakti Vilas, which was written by his elder brother, and also he considered him as a guru, Sanatana Goswami. Right? And Sanatana Goswami, even though he officially does not acknowledge it because of the request, but it's understood that he took the notes, etc., of Gopal Bhatt Goswami. So Gopal Bhatt Goswami, as you know, is the son of Venkat Bhatt Goswami, who was the chief priest of Sri Rangam temple. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent the Chaturmash, the rainy season, the 4 months over there. At that time, Gopal Bhatt was a small boy, but he was very much influenced by the extended association of Mahaprabhu. And based on the discussions, based on the instructions, as we know, Gopal Bhatt Goswami later on went and actually he went and surrendered to Mahaprabhu. So he came from a lineage where deity worship was done in a very, very thorough and precise manner. A lot of it is based on the instructions in Padma Puran. And essentially, he did that, and to some extent, he diluted them because they were very difficult to follow. And he gave the notes, Sanatana Goswami compiled it in Hari Bhakti Vilas, and these 64 points are essentially extracted from Hari Bhakti Vilas, and they are a high level extraction only, right? The details are not given. So one of the questions may be that we have earlier on made this point that bhakti does not require any prerequisites, right? There's no purification that is needed. Now, why are we saying that These are all the angas of bhakti. And the understanding is that these angas are bhakti. They are not the prerequisite for bhakti, but they constitute bhakti. And uh, uh, there is no prior qualification in following this angas, right? For instance, one of the 64 angas is Guru Padashraya. It's taking shelter of a guru, which itself does not require any prerequisite. You don't have to be a Brahman, you don't have to be an expert in scriptures or have performed austerities. Essentially, faith in Krishna is the only currency. So the 64 items of sadhana bhakti are divided into 20 items of primary importance and 44 additional items of service. These 20 items of primary importance are divided into 10 pravritis, which is the do's, activities that are accepted, and 11 to 20 another 20 items which are nivritti. Right? So it's divided in 10 activities that you should do and 10 activities that you should not do. The remaining 44 additional items of service contain from 21 to 58 the items of sadhana bhakti. Right? So these are additional details. And the 60 to 64, the last 5 items, they contain the 5 most effective elements, right? And in a way, they already, so they're repetition, they already occur in the 21 to 59, but they have been distilled and mentioned again over here for emphasis that if one cannot practice these 64 items, then at least if they practice these 5 most effective elements, they will get benefit from the execution of sadhana Vedi bhakti. Okay, so uh, so as I mentioned that chapters 6 to 13, these are the distribution. So just how do these chapters come up? In chapter 6 is the summary of the 64 items, and more or less the items are just stated over there. In the next chapter, the first 18 items are explained. And the typical process that Rupa Goswami Prabhupada follow is state the item and they give some Shastric reference that supports the execution of that item. The chapter 8 is uh, devoted to the 19th item, which is the offenses to be avoided. And there is a list of offenses from different different sources that are mentioned here. Chapter 9 has the further 23 items. Then chapter 10 is focusing on techniques of hearing and remembering and speaks about items 43 to 46, 4 items. Chapter 11 has 7 further items from 47 to 53. Chapter 12 has 11 items from 54 to 64. And the last chapter in this section, 13, talks about the 5 most potent items. Okay? So even though there are a lot of chapters and a lot of items, but for the most point, it's just enunciating these items. It's so I don't anticipate taking a long time. So uh, the first 10 are the preliminary necessities in the in just for starting the process of bhakti. Right? So Prabhupada notices that even if a neophyte he observes the above mentioned 10 principles, he will make good advancement. Now it doesn't mean that one follows this 10, makes advancement and discards them. So they are to be followed all the time, at least in the stage of sadhana Vedi. But in the initial stages, the devotee is recommended to focus more so than other items, right? So, as I mentioned, each of these items will be discussed in a slightly more detail later on. So, for now, I'm following the structure of the chapter and just stating these items, right? And we'll be discussing them later on. First is accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master, Guru Pradashraya, becoming initiated by him. Sri Krishna Dikshadi Shikshana. So Diksha means taking initiation, Shiksha means receiving instructions. Then third is following the instructions of the Guru. Fourth is following in the footsteps of the great acharyas. Right? So the first three, which are considered to be the most important, is taking shelter of the Guru. Fourth is taking advice from sadhu. Fifth is inquiring from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness, sadharma pracha. So this essentially is Shastra. Right? So the first five talk about Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, the three-way check that ensures that we are following scrupulously. And then sixth is being prepared to give up everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. Seventh is residing in a sacred pilgrimage like Dwarka or Vrindavan. So residing here also means visiting. This concept of residing. One of the things we'll see is that some of the items they appear more than once with slightly different explanations. So here residing means visiting, like it says Dwarka Adi. So Dwarka, Jagannath Puri, Vrindavan, etc. Eighth is accepting only what is necessary and dealing with the material world only as far as necessary. And fifth is observing fasting on Ekadashi days. So Hari Vasara Sama. So days like Ekadashi, like Janmashtami, and other days that are dear to the Lord. And 10th is worshipping sacred trees like the banyan trees and the tulsi trees and other sacred trees. So those were the 10 do's. Now we have the 10 don'ts. Rigidly give up the company of non-devotees. So you'll also see and that there is a resonance between NOD and NOI. Right? In Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami, he talks about the important aspects of bhakti. And one of the things he talks about is very similar to this, giving up the company of Asato Santyaga, giving up the company of non-devotees. And 12 is one should not instruct a person who is not desirous of accepting devotional service because it may result in malice in the person's heart and he will then commit offenses. One should not be very enthusiastic about constructing costly temples or monasteries because then that covers one's devotion. It becomes more of a material enterprise. One should not read too many books or become a professional reciter. Right? Person becomes a philosophical speculator. One should not be neglectful in ordinary dealings. So under the garb of bhakti, one should not deal, forget how to deal with elders, with family, with demigods, etc. One should not be under the spell of lamentation in loss or jubilation in gain. Right? So being even-minded, one of the principal themes of Bhagavad Gita. One should not disrespect the demigods, right? So even though philosophically it is explained that Krishna's position is unique, but the demigods are also advanced devotees, should not be disrespected. One should not give unnecessary trouble to any living entity, and one should carefully avoid the various offenses in chanting the holy name of the Lord or worshipping the deity in the temple. Again, this is something that gets repeated later on and also expanded. 20th is one should be very intolerant towards blasphemy of the Lord or his devotee. So those were the first 20. Now we'll quickly go over the remaining 44. One should decorate the body with tilak, which is a sign of the Vaishnavas. In marking such tilak, sometimes one may write Hare Krishna on the body, right? Or one may write with Gopi Chandan, or even get a tattoo, which is considered to be auspicious. One should accept flowers and garlands that have been offered to the deity and the spiritual master and put them on one's body. This is an anga of sadhana Vedi bhakti. One should learn to dance before the deity. One should learn to bow down immediately upon seeing the deity or the spiritual master. As soon as one visits a temple of Lord Krishna, one must stand up. And so the difference between the two is that when you go to the temple, you should go in a deferential attitude, and when you are in front of the deity, you should give obeisances. When the deity is being borne for a stroll in the street, a devotee should immediately follow the procession. Like like if there is a Jagannath Rath Yatra, or the Pratibha Murti is being carried out on a festival, a devotee must visit a Vishnu temple at least once or twice a day, morning or evening. One must circumambulate the temple building at least 3 times. One must worship the deity in the temple according to the regulative principles. Okay? One must render personal service to the deities. One must sing. One must perform sankirtan. One must chant. One must offer prayers. One must recite notable prayers. Difference between the two is the 35 is more spontaneous prayers that one may just compose themselves, and 36 is notable prayers like Gajendra Moksha, or prayers by Queen Kunti, or prayers by Lord Brahma. One must taste Mahaprasad. One must drink Charnamrita. One must smell the incense and flowers offered to the deities. One must touch the lotus feet of the deity. In temple we can't do that, so we mentally touch it. For home deities, yes, we can. One must see the deity with great devotion. One must offer arati at different times. One must hear about the Lord and his pastimes from Srimad Bhagavad, Bhagavad Gita, and similar books. One must pray to the deity for his mercy. One should remember the deity. One should meditate upon the deity. One should render some voluntary service. One should think of the Lord as one's friend. One should offer everything to the Lord. One should offer a favorite article to the deity. One should take all kinds of risks and perform all endeavors for Krishna's benefit. In every condition, one should be a surrendered soul. One should pour water on the tulsi tree. One should regularly hear Srimad Bhagavatam and similar literature. One should live in a sacred place like Mathura, Vrindavan, or Dwarka. So here you'll see the repetition. 7 and 55 are repeating. 54 is also repeating with one should hear. But there are differences that we will speak about when we discuss them in a little bit more details. One should offer service to Vaishnavas. One should arrange one devotional service according to one's means. So not too much below and not too much above one's means. In the month of Kartik, one should make arrangements for special services. During Janmashtami, one should observe a special service. Then the last 5 are the most potent aspects. One should do whatever is done with great care and devotion for the deity. So first is essentially deity worship. One should relish the pleasures of Bhagavatam reading amongst devotees and not amongst outsiders. So the second is reading of the Bhagavad in Vaishnava Sangha. One should associate with devotees who are considered more advanced. Third is Vaishnava Seva. One should chant the holy name of the Lord. So for Japa or Nam Seva. One should live in the jurisdiction of Mathura. Right? So these are the 5 most potent aspects of bhakti. Now, if you were to do an overview of the 64 items, so they are essentially activities of the body, mind, and speech. So what they are trying to do is to help the devotee, the sadhaka, engage all 3 aspects: the body, the mind, and the speech in devotional service. So quick recap: items 1 to 20 are the first 10 are the most important injunctions. The second 10 are the important prohibitions. And for the remaining 44, the 11 items are with the whole body. 21 to 31 with the voice, 5 items, chanting, singing, etc. Taste is 2 items, prasad, chanamrita. Smell is 1 item, so flowers and incense. Touch is 1 item, touching the deity. A sight is 2 items. Hearing is 1 item. Mind is 9 items. Then Tadiya Seva. Tadiya Seva is serving with a great sense of attachment, with the sense that I am Krishna's. And then 57 to 59 are mixed items, and 60 to 64 are the 5 important items that are repeated. Right? So that brings us to the end of the 6th chapter. We now will, in the next discussion, cover the 7th chapter. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.